All right, here we go. It's my pleasure to welcome Melvin Farmer,
Hey, how you
Triple
doing?
OG.
Yes, sir. Thank you
Well,
for having me.
absolutely, one of the co-founders of the Eight Tray Crips. Would that be a fair assessment?
A founding member of the Crips, a founder, co-founder of the Eight Tray Gangster Crips. Yes, sir.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying. Well, I want to get into your whole story. So let's go ahead and start in the very beginning. So where'd you grow up?
I grew up on a little bit of the east side in my early years till about 67. Then we moved to the west side, which you can look up, and they started integrating from the east side where the blacks started going over there. And so I grew up on the little bit on the east side, and the last 30 something, 40 some years I've been on the west side.
Okay, and what street exactly?
I live just on the west side. When you're in Los Angeles, the 110 freeway divides, and I'm from the west side of that. I live down the Hoover corridor, 81st, 83rd, 92nd, 95th. I lived on 83rd and Western. I lived on 60th and 10th Avenue. I lived on Imperial in Vermont. And I'm named these streets because every one of them now is very reputable gang districts. Eight Tray Gangsters, 63rd and 10th Avenue, the 60s, Imperial and Crenshaw, IBC, 83rd and Hoover, Eight Tray Hoovers, 92nd and Hoover, where I'd say Nine Deuce. So that's really, you'll see, it's an advantage in what we do here because of the dialogue that we can create from growing up in those areas.
Well, your mom was 16 when she had you.
Hmm.
Okay, and siblings?
I have two sisters.
Okay. Was your father around?
Yes,
Okay. Was it a tough situation being, are you the oldest or somewhere in the
I'm
middle?
the oldest,
You're the oldest.
firstborn. Yes, sir.
Okay, so here you have a mother who's still in high school, and your father was around the same age?
Now, my father was a couple of years older, but they come from a generation where the men were working since they were old enough to work
Okay,
from that generation. So my dad probably was 20
okay,
when my mom was 16, something like that.
okay. Was it a tough situation with parents so young?
Not in this era. The toughest situation my parents faced was civil rights, segregation, going to school. That's their era.
Aha, okay. So when you moved, well, originally you were in the east side and then moved to the west side around 15, 16, or how's that?
Been on the west side since I was about 9 years old.
Okay. So during that time, was it primarily a black neighborhood or was it a white neighborhood with white flight, or what was going on in the area
When
that
I
you were in?
moved over to the west side as a kid, now I done went from poverty on this side to where you have theaters, you had miniature golf, you had giant slide, you had swimming pools. But the other side of the freeway, coming on back to the east side, you didn't have no giant slides. So the west side, which I was moving on to, was predominantly white. You didn't have, like, say, the Jordan Down projects. We come up in homes, two-bedroom homes that cost money, people working people, and it was migration. Then they built Crenshaw High, so I was right in the era of integration on the west side.
Okay. And how was racial relations during that time when you were a kid?
Well, they were really, they had started moving out and had what was left of the whites, the Caucasians. They were over in Inglewood. I'm from the LA side. One side of Van Ness would be Inglewood, and the other side would be Los Angeles.
Okay. Did you experience racism yourself growing up?
Yeah, amongst by police and privileged whites, because I went to, say, Orville Wright Junior High, to where one morning, my first day of school, they lagging against the wall, and a white boy, he come and take their money. He swept all of them quarters up. But he went in that principal office when the boys went and told, and they all said, I did it. And I got kicked out of school.
for that.
I almost got my butt tore up by my mama because nobody believed me. But it wasn't nothing funny about that. When you look at it, it's racism.
Yeah, absolutely.
I told them I didn't do it. All them said I did do it. So, ain't nothing funny about that.
Well, I guess your mother felt that, you start experiencing trouble when you guys moved to 83rd.
Yes, sir.
What started to change at 80, when you moved to 83rd?
Well, now, it didn't change exactly then. She just didn't know it had changed prior to that. What changed my life was the first time I ever did school. And we were staying on 92nd and Hoover. And the first time I ever did school, when I come back from school, the whole building waiting like you're in a Roman arena, and they putting their hands down like Nero, but they screaming, "Ooh, you gonna get it? Your daddy waiting on you." So I'm like, what is this? I'm ditching. But he whooped me with a extension cord. And I didn't like it.
What happened after that?
I never went back to school again.
And you were how old?
That's the 6th grade.
6th grade. That was the last time you went to school.
I went to school every day. I just didn't go to class.
Okay. You actually grew up in a home where your father was abusing your mother.
Yes.
Okay. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. It's on record on the video from the LA Times. I was a younger man, probably about 14 or 15. And my mother was real pretty, and she was younger. So a lot of times they'd go out, which was family outings. And my dad always be kind of jealous because most of the men try to talk to my mama.
Right.
So a lot of times it'll be abuse. So one day I hear my mama crying. But I hear fists. And I had a pistol on me. And I waited on my father in the hallway. And I caught him in the hallway and placed a pistol up under his heart and told him, if I ever hear my mother holler like that again, I'm going to have to use this. And he never touched her again.
How'd your father react when he had that pistol to his chest?
I went in one room. I walked one way. He didn't never say a word and went his way, and I went and went to sleep. And he never touched her again, and he never, as far as I knew, he never touched her again, and he didn't say nothing to me about it.
And you were how old at the time?
About 14.
Okay. And why did you have a pistol at that point? Was that your pistol, or was that the family pistol?
No, I had been getting and carrying pistols since about 13. I had stole that pistol. So this is when the Crips and gangbanging started at this time, but they don't know it. But that's what, at this time I'm 14, so now we finna start getting a little bit active.
Okay, and what year was this?
That's about 71.
Okay, and Crippin started at 69.
Yes.
So this was real close to the start of it.
Yes.
Okay. So how did Cripping start based on your experience?
Well, you hear a lot of opinions. That's a good question. So when I speak on what I say, I speak from the truth and experience. All I can do is say my story. I know Raymond Washington. Raymond's Crip started, and I want to say happy birthday to the founder of the Crips, which is Raymond Washington. Today is his birthday, so this is in honor of him and some of his comrades that grew up with him at that time. Raymond and them founded the Crips in 69. But a lot of times people say, oh, they spring soft to this or that. They were just a group of men, but they were dormant.
Okay.
Because at this time, they're on the east side. That's why I go back to that 110 freeway. They're east side. We're on the west side. So it started from there. But like I say, all the attractions were on the west side. So now you got, in 71, now you got Soul Train, gangbanging, and pop locking coming along. which are still staples today. So what happened was Raymond Washington came back then. They used to have what they used to call the Boss Town Cross record hops. Sportsman Park, Roy Campanella, Manchester. They had these sock hops. So Raymond and them came over there, got into it with Tookie and them. Tookie was in fact a Brookins, and he was coming home on the weekends. They scheduled a meeting at St. Andrews Park, and that's when the Crips start forming. East Side, West Side, Compton.
Okay, so it's Raymond Washington and Tookie Williams kind of formed their crews together as the Crips.
Not only him, you had from Compton, you had Mac Thomas. You had a lot of them there called, I call them founders, because this is between the era of 69 to about 72. Then this is when the Crips started.
Okay, and I've heard different reasons for the name Crip, how the actual word Crip came together. Based on what you know, what would that be?
Well, I'm gonna leave that to their speculations. I'm gonna tell you when the first time it was heard publicly.
Okay.
And that's when things changed. That was the Robert Ballou murder at the Palladium in, I believe, March 1972. That's the first time the Crips ever had been heard of, other than from the streets. They didn't know what they was at that time because they were building up into what they end up being today.
So, you joined in 72?
No, I had been around Tookie. When I transferred from off Hoover, off the east side, and moved on 83rd and Western, that means I went from Bret Harte Junior High to Horace Mann. The first girl I ever met there, when I signed into school, because I didn't carry no books. I told you I hadn't been going to class, so I'm just going to class because it's the first day. But I'm not carrying nothing, so usually they'll say, could somebody help Melvin? And it just so happened this girl who said they'll help me was Tookie's sister, Bridget. So I had been around them because by now I'm a juvenile delinquent. See, they hadn't had the term gangbanging established then. So this prior to that. So at this time, I already had been around Tookie and them since the 8th grade, where they'll be here, him, Mouse and them, and the older ones. Then we'll have Rusty, Cutes, and us, and it'll be the next level. So we had been around them since the 8th grade. But in 72 is when the Crips first got public acknowledged.
Okay, so what year did you officially join the Crips?
The day they started, on the west side.
And that day was?
They've been around since about 71.
71. Okay. And what was that crew actually called during that time?
Well, they've always had gangbanging, so you'll get a full grasp of what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Like on the east side, before there were Crips, you had Slausons, South Park, Manchester Park Boys, Cafe Boys, Smacks. These all evolved into being up under one umbrella, Crips. So on the west side, I wasn't with no gangs. I mean, as far as no cliques. I was a clique and my crew. So we end up being Eight Tray Gangsters. But coming up, you had Cafe Boys, you had Smacks, but I worked with both of them. We applied our trade where we was like freelancing.
Okay. So the Eight Tray Gangsters is based on the street name 83rd?
Yes.
Okay. Was there a reason why you called yourselves the Eight Tray Gangster Crips?
I named us Gangster Crips because when we was coming up, we grew up on cop movies, The Untouchables, Elliot Ness, Humphrey Bogart, and we used to have a little game where we come and get me, copper, and stuff like this. And then we also had a different standard where before Colors was out, we had a different way where you could identify us before Colors even came, because prior to that, as being a Westside Crip, we wore the cross earrings. And this was going toward the prevalence of colors, what I talked about. See, people have to know the order that this go, and then you'll get a better picture of what we're trying to convey. Before then, before Gangster Crips, you have to discuss the West Side, East Side, and Compton. We didn't have colors. We wore cross earrings. That's how you knew the difference between the Crips. They didn't have Bloods. You had Pyru, Van Ayers, karate families, Swans, Bishops. So there wasn't this era. We don't skip when we were Westside Crips. So once that happened, now when the Gangster Crips come out, this is when internal struggles started, and they started to try to get a structure, and everybody started going into sets at this time, and that's when you start getting the 60s, the Eight Trays, the 9-0s, the Undergrounds, the Blocks. All these sets that you see have names behind them with the final ending saying Crip. That was later on.
Okay. So you said that you've seen people get killed since around 12 or 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
How old were you when you first saw someone get killed?
Probably 66. Whenever Sam Cooke got killed, because we were staying on 92nd and Hoover at that time. And a little while after that, my mama sent me to the store to get some bread. And I walked in where a guy had shot somebody in the head in the store. Right when I was walking in, he was shooting him, and he looked at me, did like this, and took the rest of that money and went out that back door.
And you were, what, 12?
About then. I know I was still in elementary, I think.
Okay. What happens to a 12-year-old when he sees that?
Didn't do, I never thought of it. It didn't, well, I went home and told my mama. I just kept my mouth shut.
Oh, you didn't tell your mom what you just saw?
No, she didn't know till the other time I just told her not too long ago. No, I never said a word.
Okay.
Actually, this is the first time I ever saying it publicly.
Okay. So you knew not to snitch even back then as a 12-year-old?
Well, it depends on, I just knew to keep my mouth shut.
Okay.
And then nobody didn't inquire about it. Nobody knew. I even was there when it happened. When he went out that back door, I went out the other door and went back and didn't say nothing and handed my mother her money back.
Okay. So, at what point did you start carrying guns yourself?
I was carrying guns probably at about 14, 13.
Okay. Had you already joined the Crips at that point?
I joined the Crips, and I had already been around them, so I always had been around them before they started and when they started on the West Side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hanging with them.
Okay.
Yeah, we active.
And was there like a jump in that happened back then, or you being a founder that didn't apply to you?
No, I wasn't a founder. See, that's later on in life. We talking 50 years of this. In our era, we never told no kid to come join nothing. We never told, these cats fought over fighting somebody else before you. It wasn't none of that jumping in. Wasn't nothing about being told to go do this. And when they did try to start that, that's when you end up with these sets. And that's how that came about. Else the West Side didn't last very long, simply because of somebody trying to tell somebody what to do, particularly the younger ones.
Okay, so here you are, 13, 14, 15 years old. You're now part of this gang. You're carrying a gun. What are some of the situations that are happening during this age?
We going to come talk to you. We in high school every day. So say I'm at, well, at that time I'm in junior high. In junior high, I was going to a reform school called Jackson. So that was about when Terry Cadeau, so that's about at 14 or 15. So we carrying guns. One, we robbing, carjacking, taking leather coats. That's what we doing with the pistol. And every now and then, This because killing didn't start till 72 after the Ballou murder. So in 71 we was carrying pistols, but we was carrying them more so for the purpose of jacking at that time. And we were still fighting in school every day, because every day you going to school. I went to like 15 of them. So you might be at Crenshaw High, which is on the Van Ness boys area, which was end up being Bloods. So every day you got to go, and you might be seeing them after school in the morning, but you're going into enemy territory. See, that's the difference in our era and how they go now. We had to go to the action.
Okay, so you're carrying around guns, but you're not actually shooting at people at this point. You're just using it to make money, pretty much.
And that too.
And protection.
Protection, because they might have guns. So every now and then you might have a pistol. But at that time, since I was going to a school where they was all Latinos, that was in southeast LA over by Roosevelt, that was used in. I remember one time somebody climbed in a pig pen and shot up the whole, where they used to have a smoke area, where everybody could come smoke. And just so happened somebody shot up and lit up the whole smoke area. So you could have instances of shootings, yes.
Okay. Were you being shot at during this time?
Not at that time. They didn't want to shoot at Crips too much because of the repercussions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then things start to progress. And you said you started to feel like a rock star being in this gang.
No, I didn't feel like no rock star. I say that was the image. I ain't never felt like it was glorified. It just was business.
Okay.
This is what's going on, and this is what we represent, and this is what we're getting down with. So as far as in the inner city, it was the equivalent of being Jay-Z or something else, or anybody else, or Tupac, Biggie, anybody. It was a fad. It was very, it was a thing. It was the culture. Mm-hmm. It was a culture.
How's your mom taking this? Here you have, her oldest son. He's not really going to school. He's carrying pistols. He's getting into various crimes. Because are you being caught during this time, or are you being arrested, or are you getting away with most of it?
Well, at 13 and 14, I hadn't really consistently. So all the things you just said, how she felt about, she didn't know about.
Okay.
Really.
But eventually she found out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Were you getting arrested at some point?
Yes.
For what?
Now we going into gang activity, robbing, and usually carrying a concealed weapon.
Mm-hmm. So you're getting arrested for that.
Mm-hmm.
But you're still a juvenile.
Mm-hmm.
So are you being sent to youth authority, or?
I grew up in youth authority. Actually, by the time I was 17, I had been arrested 40 times because they didn't have no juvenile laws for us. They didn't have no laws for carjacking, which they call it now. When we were doing it, it was GTA. We didn't get no time for having a tattoo. They get 10 years gang enhancements. So everything we were doing, there were no laws for juveniles doing the things that we were doing, or if they did notice them, it wasn't nothing because nobody hadn't been doing it like that before.
Okay, so you got arrested 40 times.
Mm-hmm.
What was the most time you ended up doing during that?
Well, they didn't have no laws for us.
So they just let you back out?
It was a revolving, was the Wild Wild West. You get caught for a murder, it was a 2-year continuance. That's the most you're going to get for a murder. And that's stretching it.
You would get 2 years for a murder as a juvenile. That's just mind-blowing to me.
You also end up getting from these group of men the juvenile fitness hearing that you get today. That comes from Crips and Bloods in 71, 72. You also have the expulsion law. That's where when you get caught with a gun on campus, you get sent out of city schools and have to go to a CIF school or a reform school. That comes from Crips. Carjacking. GTA then later on they started making all these things, end up making it tougher to where these kids nowadays, they get the death penalty for something where we didn't even get a check mark for.
Yeah, so basically all the rules started to change based on the stuff that you guys were doing.
Back then, and they started catching on. For instance, everybody look at Tookie, and a lot of them dudes, these founders, Raymond, Tookie, them, they get a bad rep. They never carried a gun.
Never.
They never carried a gun. Raymond Washington got killed in 79. I was with him the day before that. Tookie got arrested in March 79, and I was with him a couple of days before that where I told him the dude you with is a snitch. Well, at that time, we didn't have the word snitch. It was telling. I say, man, I think this boy telling. So I've been around them quite a bit, and that's a myth. The killing didn't start till the younger ones that were 13, 14-year-olds got in the game. That's the ones that started the violence.
Okay, and I want to talk about that, but I just want to touch on Tookie and Raymond Washington. So you were close to both of them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now Raymond Washington ended up getting killed. What was the situation around that?
Well, I don't know the situation around that. I'm not going to speak on it, but I can speak on my last days with him. And at that time, Raymond was in the cars. He just had purchased a vehicle, and we had went on 107th in Vermont, talking to my boy Red from Hoover, and they were in the cars and stuff. And at that time, he supposed to have been making a deal to trade a car with him. And right after that, about no more than 48 hours later, received message that somebody had called Raymond up to the car and shot him, and he got assassinated right after that.
Was the person convicted who killed him?
Nobody's ever been.
No one's ever been convicted of that. Okay. How did you feel when your friend Raymond Washington got killed?
Well, actually, the same person that told on Tookie had just told on me, so now I'm in jail. I'm in jail now. The same snitch that I told Tookie to look out for, he don't told on me about a jewelry store robbery on there. So right before Raymond, at that time I was in jail. But let me tell you this though. It wasn't no hoopla. Wasn't this grandstanding like this rapping, acting, and mortuary art. It was.
Keep it quiet. Okay.
And that's it.
All right, and you and Tookie were close as well.
Yes, sir.
Now, Tookie's kind of a mythical figure because, a lot of the rappers talked about him and mentioned him in the songs and so forth. Based on your relationship with Tookie, describe him to me.
He's the Clark Gable of the Crips. He's the face, the front man.
Okay.
Took him, Juvenile, same one that told him, Lil Jack, and a lot of them. Took was the face of the Crips because Raymond at this time, now Raymond's in jail. See, Tookie could stay and mess around because he ended up getting a job working for Juvenile Hall, running boys' homes in Compton. A lot of people don't know that. So he quit going to jail after about 1972 somewhere and started robbing the boys' home. But Tookie never carried a gun. They were fighters. And Tookie didn't have to tell. So when Tookie talked, Tookie didn't talk to everybody. You might have Tookie standing here talking to, say, Juvenile from the east side, and we'll be right behind him. But it'd only be them talking.
And Tookie was huge.
Yeah.
He was huge back then, I assume.
Quite a few of them was huge. Munson, you had Michael Christian. Let's not forget about him in this equation. Craig Craddock. These are also the founding members also that were there that was on par with Tookie and them that people don't even know existed. But you had Michael Christian, Mac Thomas, Big Honcho Wayne Day and all them. All these guys were Donald Archie, who brought Tookie over to the West Side. That's who brought him in, so let's not forget him. That's Doc. So yeah, Tookie was like the Clark Gable. We might be at the Forum where you got Michael Jackson singing on stage and you got them posing, and we up here robbing the whole stadium while they posing. So these are the younger ones. Yeah, they'll be posing, we'll be robbing, passing the hat around. Everybody empty your pockets.
You'd be robbing concerts, basically.
I've seen them rob the whole section where the Crips don't, section off a section, pass their derbies down, and have something in your pockets if we check twice.
Okay. But then Tookie gets arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And you say that someone you knew snitched on him.
Mm-hmm.
You also said that he was framed.
He was, and I go so far to say this. See, now when we talk about social justice, our voices need to be heard, and let's go with facts. I'm gonna say this. I guarantee you, I put every man on death row in the world, including my life, that if we ever go into the court or get my allegations heard, which they were heard because his lawyers came and filed an affidavit 72 hours before he was executed, and they denied it and they aired without coming to talk to me. I bet everybody life on death row in America that my allegations stand true up under Brady versus Maryland. Prosecutorial misconduct. He named 4 things he said that he was fighting his life for, and each one of them in the hindsight were correct, and I bet my life on it.
Well, he was convicted on 4 counts of murder, committed in 2 or 3 separate instances.
No, let's get it straight. No. 2 separate incidents, and that's, he got the murder at the 7-Eleven in Whittier, and he got the murder or the triple homicide at the hotel on Vermont. That's where the cover-up is. He did the first murder. See, people get these murders all mixed up and then they go to saying, oh, he guilty all of them. That's not true. 99.9 of these people don't even know what happened in that case. I was there. I introduced him to the people that know. I know what happened. His lawyers came and seen me. They aired in my affidavit I gave them. They covered it up. And up under Brady versus Maryland, which he was fighting his life for. These are on records. I can prove any allegation that he said later on in hindsight, they were true. And this is why, one of the reasons we attacked the death penalty, because you cannot take a person's life back after you don't made a mistake. It was a crucial error made on this man's life, and I'm not talking factual about the governor giving him clemency. I talked to them. I'm talking about in the court of law up under Brady versus Maryland, and that's what most people usually get out of from a life sentence to get relief because it throws out all 3 of the murders. Them cases should have been thrown out. And they erred by not hearing my testimony at that time.
Okay. But he was ultimately convicted, given the death penalty.
Quite a few of them have been ultimately convicted, but also you forget the other side. A lot of them have been exonerated that got to get out alive, whereas in his case, he didn't.
Did you maintain contact with him after he went to prison?
Well, I did 30-some years in prison. At that time, I'm in prison. But during the time that he was initially arrested for the murder, yeah, because the same snitch told on me, but we didn't know it at that time.
Right, that came out
So
later.
we going to the same court together. Mm-hmm. Kyle Lau Menendez was in there.
Oh, okay.
Quite a few of them because I'm giving them notes. We passing notes. They bring him out to visit. I'll be out and visit it. So yeah, we making contact at that time, but at the time we didn't know the snitch had snitched on both of us.
Well, Tookie went on to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize based on the books he wrote, right?
Yes, sir.
And he was actually up for clemency, but Schwarzenegger denied his application for clemency, and he ended up getting executed. I'd heard they actually broke a bunch of needles, even trying to get the needle in his arm because he was so muscular.
Well, what happened was they couldn't get it in there. Barbara Becknell, that was the one that helped him write the books. They had called me in the office because everybody knew that I knew what happened, and we was hoping so. First-hand accounts, Barbara told me they couldn't find a vein. They couldn't. Then the nurse was nervous, and that's actually they stopped executing in California behind that up under the cruel unusual punishment because and start making it where they had to get a different cocktail, a combination. It used to be three. I think they just overturned that. So yeah, he was that big. Now I can tell you this about how big he was when he was at his peak. You know, you got your handcuffs.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't put Tookie hands behind him. So when they, in '79, when he got arrested, you had to have shackles, a chain where they'll wrap him and they'll cuff his wrists with the chain, just wrap his hands.
Yeah.
That's how big he was.
Okay.
So then, yeah, he was enormous.
How did you feel when Tookie got executed?
That an innocent man had lost his life due to the criminal justice system. And what could I do to make sure it don't happen to nobody else? And that's when I wrote the book, The New Slave Ship, a ship that doesn't sail 3 strikes you in. That's also in honor of him. And try to get social change and justice. It was wrong what happened. I got not only him, I got 20, 30 other partners of mine on death row. And you know, one of the things that's wrong with the death penalty, if you're going to have it, make it where it's universal. That mean if Spanky or whatever his name was, where he killed his wife, where he lost the gun in the restaurant and then his wife get killed right outside, that could have been a death penalty case. Kyle and Lyle Menendez, they killed their mama for financial gain.
The mother and father.
Yeah, but why they didn't get the death penalty?
Good point.
No, so either if you see, I don't care if you have it or not, because it ain't a deterrent.
Yeah.
To somebody that's doing crime on the streets. That's just a myth. You don't see them running off crying and hollering when they go into the death chamber. It's no more, let me tell you, it's nothing more psychologically damaged than waking up in the morning in prison knowing you're going to die in there. Trust me, that's a hard pill to swallow.
Well, in 1979, along with Tookie's arrest, was the start of the Eight Tray Rollin 60s war.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know the guys involved in the original altercation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I understand the whole thing was over a girl.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain the story?
Well, at that time, prior to that, Big Rick brother got killed in March '79. When I went to jail is when this started escalating, because when I moved on 60 on 10th Avenue, so we had a relationship with them. Then they got into a fight. A guy from 90 Gangster or whatever, he ended up shooting Big Rick brother, which is Tyrone. And I had been knowing Tyrone since he was 7 or 8 years old at that time. So Tyrone get killed.
And Tyrone's from the Rollin 60s.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But the guy that killed him wasn't from Eight Tray Gangster. He was from 90. So at that time they wanted to turn this guy in, and they were telling them, we can't do that. We have nothing to do with it at that time. And then it just escalated from there, because now I had went to jail. They didn't actually start war until 1980, because they didn't know each other like that after I left. I was the common glue because I stayed on 10th Avenue. When I moved off 83rd and Western, I moved on 63rd and 10th Avenue. And when I moved on 10th Avenue, over there they were bishops. Not the 60s, they had bishops, Lucky in them, but they also end up having neighborhood is what they started off as. And actually I got into a confrontation We're lucky to where me, Barefoot Pookie, I'm getting dropped off from school one day and I see a group of men at this other end of this party. This when I first moved over there. And I asked them where they from. And they say, we're bishops. So I say, are you East Side bishops? Like the East Side bishops? Because I never heard no West Side bishops. And they say, yeah. And my exact words was, don't be here tomorrow. And them all came. I stayed where I stayed. They left. And then the Rollin 60s appeared. And already were in place because they were a spinoff from the West Side anyway. So that's when the 60s started. Mm-hmm.
Well, I interviewed Big U,
Mm-hmm.
and he was around during this whole time. I'd seen some other interviews where basically he was describing how these fights would start to escalate. And before that time, there really was not, number one, there weren't a lot of murders, and Crips and Bloods really weren't shooting at each other like that.
Where it wasn't a lot of murders.
Between Crips.
No, not at that time.
At that time, yeah.
But they always had been internal murders. But at that time, they were still Blood versus Crips. This changed the whole landscape in 1980, you're correct. But it was a lot of, 72, 73, 74, 75, there were a lot of murders.
Well, Big U said that the C was born in 69, but was split in 79. So now you have a situation where he said it was the first Crip on Crip rivalry in LA history.
That was one of them. The first Crip on Crip rivalry was the Hoovers and the Hundreds.
Okay.
See, you got West Side, East Side, Compton, and then the Hoovers came. And a lot of Crips didn't like them. So at that time, when we start going into sets, you had the Hoovers, the Gangsters, and the 60s creating the Bermuda Triangle. We were all together.
Uh-huh.
So the Hoovers also have been fighting since 74 internally, but it just didn't start to get publicly and go big to where it split right down the middle, like Big U say. That's when it really parted ways, the Red Sea, in which we had standing today.
Right. And he said that split, that beef between the Eight Tray Gangsters and the Rollin 60s Crips.
Crippin started in 69. This is when they say the C was born. Mm-hmm. The C was born in 69, but in 79 the C was split up. And more than it was a beef with the Rollin 60s and the Eight Tray Gangsters, it split up LA.
Yeah.
Like when the Rollin 60s and the Eight Tray Gangsters started fighting, it split LA in half.
It split the nation. Split LA, split continents to this day. That split it. Pretty much you were allies with them, or either you were allies with us.
Well, he also said it became an arms race.
It became like an arms race. And it changed LA. And what people don't understand is it changed LA in the fact that where now you had to either decide you was gonna be with the neighborhood car or you was gonna be with the gangster car. And it split the gangs of LA up.
Yeah, everyone had to take sides at that point.
Everyone had to take sides.
Yeah. What started to change as that started to escalate?
Well, I was doing time in prison, and since I never got involved in it, I can't describe what was happening because I don't know nothing about Crip on Crip. That's a different era.
Right.
See, I'm proud of that. See, I never left home. I'm strictly Blood versus Crips. So that's a different era. So I don't know about no arm race. All I know is the violence got real quick, actually for 40-something years.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the most deadliest rivalries in there, but by the grace of God, since I knew both of them from they seeds, I stayed out the way. I didn't take this side, and I didn't take that side or try to hurt. I wouldn't take my skills. I just stopped gangbanging actually at 17
Yeah.
because I couldn't go against these dudes that I had been going with. Now I'm going to turn around because of a thing, and they started sets. See, everybody I grew up with started sets. They didn't join those sets. That's a big difference. Like when you say OG. I don't like to be called OG because they say original gangster. I'm an original Crip. We started that term. Then the black exploitation films started coming out with Jim Brown and all them, and they were called OGs. See how you got original gangsters?
Right.
But OG actually started from the Crips, which stood for original Crips, original members. And so it's been watered down a little bit when you say OG.
Okay. Well, I saw an interview with OG Hunchy from the Eight Trays, and he said that the Eight Tray Rollin 60s war, he said, was the dumbest war in the world because it started with two teenagers fighting over a female.
He was there.
He was there.
That's why I refer to them. I was in jail, but they hadn't been into it then. Hunchy, Sidewinder, Rayford, Big Rick, Odie Shaw, they all got into a conflict over there, and that's how that went about. He was actually there. Him, Baycott, Sidewinder, all them. So.
Okay. So you get sentenced to 30 years?
Which one?
Well, what was the first long sentence that you got?
I got framed after the long sentence. I was one of the first to get the 3 strikes. After being framed by police then, I got a 35 year to life sentence for $2 worth of drugs.
Okay, what kind of drugs?
Cocaine. But $2, I wasn't even threatening life. They implemented a law in 1994. They had been trailing me for 90 days. Placed some drugs on me to make me a poster child for the 3 strikes. And I got 35 years to life for a law that was written in 1994 that went backwards and said my priors that happened in 75, 76 are strikes. So.
Okay. But this is much later. This is 94. We're talking 79, 80, 81.
At 79, you was getting 3 years for robbery.
Right.
See, I was going in and out.
Right. So what were you getting convicted of along the way?
Robbery.
So robberies.
I've never been convicted of violence against any person.
Okay.
I've strictly robbing or guns.
Okay. Armed robberies. I see. Okay. And how much time were you getting for each of these robberies?
Once again, they didn't have no laws. We was getting
In and out.
2 years, 3 years, 16 months. As juveniles, I was arrested 35 times for robbery.
Okay. So at 17, you stopped gangbanging.
Pretty much.
Okay. Were you locked up during that time or you were out?
Well, from 13, 14, I went to jail all the way almost till 94 when I got the life sentence. I was in and out. It was a revolving door. I had got caught up in the juvenile justice system. So, yeah.
Well, you said something interesting. You said they've always had gangs. The only difference with the Crips and Bloods is they're anti-black. Everything else was pro-black. That's why I stopped. That's why the movement stopped.
Yeah, the civil rights movement stopped because of Crips and Bloods. When we started going to prison, we had to fight the Mexican mafia, the black guerrilla family. We coming in there following George Jackson, Geronimo Pratt. These were, they just had the San Marin shootout where they went and tried escaping from San Quentin up from Soledad to Soledad Brothers and all that. And here it is, a group of young blacks coming in for getting into it with blacks. They didn't like that. So that was another war that people don't even know about, where you had to check your guns into the county when you come in. It ain't no carrying no gun now. You better have some heart.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting way to look at it. that Crips and Bloods usually shoot other black people.
Well, that whatever his name is, Professor Tyson, you know, I got a saying. Every race has a organization that will kill me and my fellow blacks because of the color of our skin, but blacks only kill blacks because of the areas they stay in. See, we got a system set up to where they created to where it's basically if you make a trap, let's go in LA off 83rd and Western. If I go south, I'm going to end up in Beverly Hills, so I know I better not go there because I get caught doing what I do in the inner city, so I'm going to fool around and get the death penalty. Going to an all-white. If I go to Palos Verdes, south, now I'm going to Palos Verdes, south. That's where they were sending us from there. They had a 99.9 conviction rate where they had to overturn all the judges and tear down the whole courtroom. But that's where we were going to court as juveniles. If I go to the west, we got the beach. If I go to the east, we got Westminster. So what happens is, and we're trapped inside, like rats in a maze. And if you get too hungry, rats eat rats. So what happens is, it's very easy, first of all, to kill a stranger. Very easy to kill a stranger in LA. And then you go and do that, and then you run back because we're the closest, because it's more easier to get away. So we only prey on each other because of the closeness and the nearness. Like, for instance, I'm not going to leave 83rd and Western and go all the way to Compton to shoot nobody. But we also don't know who's all shooting. Could be the police, which go on. We don't know. Then you have the gun violence. There's multiple ways to where we're being oppressed where you can get killed by gunfire. Very dangerous in these streets, these inner cities, these pockets of poverty, as Obama called them.
Well, Monster Cody was an Eight Tray. Do you guys know each other?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He's a little bit younger than you.
Yes, sir, but he's still a first-generation warrior. Yeah, he's a little younger, but he was around.
Okay.
Cody's been around.
How would you describe Monster Cody?
All right guy with me. I've been around him. We done a lot of things. He just all around good guy with me. I mean, what he do outside of what he do, but me on a personal relationship, he represented, did what he did, I did what I did, but he from Eight Tray. It's my homie.
Yeah, I mean, his book was one of the first books that I read about Crips. He had a couple of books. There was a book that he wrote himself, and there was a book that this woman wrote about him, where he was a primary character. And that was just kind of just mind-blowing to me, how he would just wake up in the morning and go shoot at people, and then come home, have lunch, and it would just be a normal day.
Now that I can agree. Now, I can understand that because that's actually what gangbanging was about. See, all these other images, being a drug dealer and saying, oh, I'm a Crip, or this and that. Gangbanging is when you're active and you're really going at somebody. Or you protecting yourself. All the other things. So that in that mindset, I can see that happening. I've done it before.
Shooting at people.
Or protecting myself after getting shot at.
Okay.
But the difference is, my era, we kept it within the rules and the guidelines to those that signed up to play this game.
Like, how many times have you been shot at, if you were to count them all up?
Shot at? Probably 20 times, 30. But now, ask me how many murders I know about.
How many murders do you know about?
About 1,500, 2,000.
How many times did you actually get shot?
Never been shot.
Never actually touched?
None.
Stabbed?
None.
Jumped?
None. Oh, let me say this. When I first, because like I say, before we was gangbanging, we juvenile delinquents, stealing, and stuff like this. They used to have a shoe store, Kenny Shoe Store, right across the street from St. Andrews Park, where all the Crips used to meet. I'm about the 8th grade, and I go steal some Stacy Adams biscuits, because a lot of people died over biscuits at that time. Stepping on these biscuits on their toes, I seen a lot of people lose their life over that.
Over stepping on someone's shoes.
No more different than robbing for Jordan tennis. So nothing they doing is new, just a different name. Mm-hmm. But back in this days, you better not step on nobody's biscuit.
Okay.
But I'm going back to the jumping.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't stole the biscuits. I run across the St. Andrews Park. Now, this is just when I'm moving over there. And I run over there with the tennis. And you got guys that were with Tookie, but Tookie and them wasn't there. But they were older, and they were end up being in the Bob Big Boy and the murders later on with Big Bob now. But when I run over there, they older guys. And they take my Stacy Adams. But I fight them. And my mama say on there he came home with a black eye. I don't know how he got it. But that's how I end up. So I went and stole another pair the next day. Mm. But the next time I go up to the park with these stolen, I had a pistol on me. I ain't had a problem since.
What changed about you after you started getting shot at? You said there was roughly 20 times.
Nothing ever changed.
So you just took it in stride?
That's part of the game.
Okay. Were other people getting hit around you?
Very few people around me took losses. None of my friends that I grew up with ever got killed.
Okay, what about shot?
Later on, but I had quit gangbanging by 17. But from my year 13 to 17, we didn't take no losses. Crips, period. Wasn't too many of us getting, for one thing, like when we be in Juvenile Hall, where you can really see the numbers. It might be 100 of us and maybe 2 Bloods, but we never jumped on them. I mean, you talking about Puddin', Tam, Bodacious, Terry Cadeau, Lil Country, Ford Dog, Gerald McMillan, Swig, Connie, Michael Jordan. All these are big-time Bloods later on in life. Because that was a congregation point to where the Crips and the younger Bloods started meeting because they didn't have laws. So a lot of breeding took place within the juvenile system. So it wasn't a lot of losses in the early stages for the Crips.
Okay. And you said that you shot at people before.
No, I said I only protected myself.
Okay, meaning you shot back?
Yeah, I shot back.
Got it. You know, Monster Cody in his book, he said something interesting. He said that if he's on his block and, you know, the enemies roll up on his block, like let's say the Rollin 60s would roll down on his block, he said that him and his homies would shoot it out regardless of how many people showed up and how outnumbered they were. But one police would show up and everybody would scatter.
What about it? Well, who gonna stand there with illegal guns after shooting at each other? What they supposed to do? Are you asking me, could that possibly be true? Or are you asking me, what? That's what else they supposed to do after they don't got into it?
Well, no. I'm saying not to link those two situations together. I'm saying that, you know, him being an Eight Tray gangster, he would shoot it out with anyone else. It doesn't matter how outnumbered they were. But in general, one police would show up and everybody would scatter. It just shows the mentality of, at the end of the day, these are all brave men that all stand up for themselves, but nobody wants to go up against the police.
And that's where we different. See, I'm an equal opportunity right now, and that's why I say don't get everybody mixed up under the same cloth. A lot of times, you have to know that individual. 1992, the Gangster Crips had the riot after Rodney King. We have a history of standing up against police misconduct. And I particularly do because I'm not scared of dying. Right now I'm on an 83-year sentence I'm coming off from Georgia, where once again I was wrongly convicted. And there's a lawyer in Lawrenceville that needs to be barred for the rest of his life, where they charged me with 3 counts of attempted murder on the police. I was found guilty. I received a 80-some year sentence. I'm doing 30 years parole now. So at this point, you can't tell me about not engaging police, because I will when my civil rights are being violated. And that did happen, and it's a lot of us, or a lot that will.
Well, right, the Reginald Denny situation when he got beat up, which ended up being on camera. Those were Eight Trays who ended
That's
up
who
getting
started
convicted.
Florence and Normandy.
Yep.
Football, the LA4, a lot of scrutiny and surveillance came up behind that on us. They came and arrested me. First, they locked me up in jail when the riots happened, and I'm in prison. So why would you lock me up in prison for a riot on the streets?
Right.
Then when I got out, they end up finding a gang of weapons in somebody's backyard. If I wasn't out for the riots, how am I gonna know something about some guns? But they came and got me and picked me up in a gang sweep, and I'm staying in the Fox Hill Mall at $2,000 a month rent, having money. But these are the labels that happens, that also the underside of this. So I've always been a person where I never violated, where I would threaten somebody's life to try to take them. Like when I was robbing, I'm not gonna kill you if you say I'm not gonna. I might try to bluff you out of it, but I'm not gonna try to harm you for that money. I've always had a sense of fairness to where if you threaten somebody's life, don't be mad if yours get taken. It's simple as that.
Well, I interviewed Afro Man, and he was actually Eight Tray Gangster as well. Did you guys know each other?
I just seen him, yeah, he be with Lil Sody and him, yeah, I know Afro.
Yeah, and he described how
they was busing in these kids, and these kids was coming from the west side. Those were all Rollin 60s. So even though my hood was 2 blocks away, I'm in a school full of Rollin 60s. You like...
Horse Man, that's where the 60s, the Eight Trays and Van Ness boys come from. They spurned from there, that's all they come out there. Whereas when you go to Henry Clay, up the road, you're getting the hundreds, the underground block, Watergate, Raymond. You're getting a lot of other sets from there. So high schools is where the Crips actually started breeding from. The Unified School District and Parks and Recreations have a big role in the breeding of people being inaugurated into the gangs.
well, I remember I grew up in the Bay where you didn't have Crips and Bloods. And I didn't know about Crips and Bloods until the movie Colors came out. Did that movie change the perception and the visibility of Crips?
What it did do is commercialize them, where somebody made some money off of other people that are real gang members ain't getting a dime. That's what it did do. And actually, I ain't never seen it. I don't look at none of them movies.
Okay.
And the reason I say this because it's usually don't depict the things we did. So I'm going to be looking at something, so I never seen the movie to make a comment on it.
Okay. And then in the late 80s, NWA came out. And, I mean, Ice-T was out before then. So that was the first, L.A. gangster rapper. But NWA, I feel like changed, really changed the perception of gangs in L.A. And I remember I interviewed the World Class Wrecking Crew.
Now, first of all, gangs have been around forever in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Gangs had different reasons for existence. Some gangs started off to fight white people. Some gangs were designed to fight the police in the community, because what we're experiencing right now is nothing new. It's just being televised more. So the ratio of gangbangers to civilians was minuscule in the early 70s and early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, okay? Right after NWA, now I've been in the club business all this time, and I stopped making records. went back to my second career, which is nightclub owner. What happened was NWA and rap, or gangster rap made gangster lifestyle cool. So the ratio started to change. Everybody was a gangbanger. It used to be 5% gangbanger, okay? Because gangbangers, once upon a time, had a code. You just couldn't have a gun. You had to be able to fight. You had to have something to bring to the hood other than a pistol. Well, at some point in time, when the dope and the gangbanging became profitable, everybody became a gangbanger. So now you got 95% gangsters or 90% gangsters and 10% civilians. And when that happened, everything went crazy because now theaters, clubs, parking lots, the park, everything is a war zone.
Yeah.
Okay? There used to be a time where there were places that you could go and you could feel safe. But when gangster rap, when the gangster lifestyle became fashionable, the whole city became one big ass war zone.
Do you remember seeing all that?
I was with Michael Conception at that time, and that's my boy who made We All in the Same Gang. The only reason I wasn't, I've been around since the hip hop started on the West Coast through being around Michael Conception. So, but like I said, I was still going to jail, 79, 80, 81. So I missed out on being in the video because I didn't have time to wait on them. Because he say, Mike, hey, Mel, I tell you, man, I'm finna get in this record game because Grand Jury Records was made, started in Carson on Sanborn in a little room with them eggshells on them, Mike, which is where he at today. But I couldn't wait. I wanted immediate gratification. So things did change as far as putting it on a national scale and that culture from the era. It did make it expand to where it was an element of expansion, but there also was something going on at that time too, and that was that drug trade.
Right, because when crack came in, now you're monetizing the gangs.
But what you're doing is Crips and Bloods are starting to go out of town where they're getting double the money and claiming Crip, and also that. So that just one part of it. So you see how it is? There's other elements that also, but as far as NWA, they help popularize it, make it a fad, make it sociable and acceptable.
Yeah.
But the only thing, that's acting and rapping to where you had real people that were losing their lives. 79, 80, 81, and that's when they started coming out. So you did, but the level, that's entertainment. Let's not forget the fact that you still had dudes that were still very, very active that wasn't rapping. Gangbanging ain't rapping, acting, or entertainment where after 2 or 3 songs or the movie end and it's over with. I've been in this game 48 years. Not a minute I ain't had to sit and not worry about my life or had this stigma Crip, because in LA it's a whole different ball game and fabric as opposed to the nation. You could be in Texas, you could be in New York and say, I ain't banging no more. You can go on and be a grandfather. In LA, you don't get to be that because you're still up under the same conditions, you're still within the same surroundings to where the same shit is going on.
So you feel to this day you have to look over your shoulder based on some of the things you used to do?
No, I ain't never had to look over my shoulder for nothing I did because it's always been within the rules. See, I don't have no smut on me. I don't have no shooting nobody in the back. Our name, our face was our ID, and our passports were our pistol. See, your eras are different than what you usually see because very few people talk on this subject that's been around as long as I have. So you usually only hear it after the 1980s, like where you coming, but very few talk about the 9, 10 years to where it really made it what it is today because the rules were different and a lot of these guys get bad breaks. See, like when you say the Eight Tray Rollin 60, to me it should be Crips versus Bloods during that era. See, I never participated in Crip on Crip. So nothing happened after 1980 do I even know about. I don't know what it feels like to shoot a Crip.
At one point, you said you got framed with $2 worth of cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you didn't have 2 strikes before, they retroactively gave you 2 strikes.
California is the only state out of 33 states that had the 3 strikes law in 94 when it first came out, where they law is retroactive. So it was signed as an emergency measure overnight, no voter registration or legislation. It was signed by the governor.
So
Because
who was the governor at the time?
I want to say Brown.
Okay.
I'm going to just take a guess it's Brown. But Clinton then was also running for presidency. Then you had...
So you had the war on drugs. That was
yeah,
starting to
but
ramp
this
up.
is what catapulted Tough on Crime, which created my book right there, The New Slave Ship. It predicted mass incarceration starting because of the actions that occurred in California up under the 3 Strikes Law, which was came out March 7th, 1994, but it was retroactive where it could go back to 1894.
Wow.
So overnight, with the swipe of a pen where a governor said emergency measures need to be taken. Emergency measures. What was happening in 1994 to where you need to make a law that went retroactive that would lock a man up for his prior offense, but then you ain't made no law to go and put Charles Manson back on death row. You killed and executed Tookie after you let Charles Manson off, but you didn't go and make a law to where you could go and put Charles Manson back on death row. So if you follow me, they made a law.
It was a racist law, basically.
No, follow me. You made a law that could go backwards and take my life for something I pled guilty for. 1973, they stopped the death penalty. This is very important. But 1977, they started it back.
Yeah.
Now, if you started this law back to where the death penalty is in effect, why you didn't go back and get Charles Manson and put them back on death row?
Right, because Manson died
In prison of natural causes.
prison of natural
But
causes,
the
yeah.
point is they couldn't go backwards because it adversely affect them. But you made a law in 94 that go
went-
back and
that
take
went
my
backwards,
life.
yeah.
Now you see, no law has ever been made like that
Yeah, it's
in the
crazy.
United States. But yet we talk about social justice and attacking the criminal justice system. This law, this 3 Strikes law, if Jay-Z them for to talk about social change, because a lot of times they'll get up in there, he just signed with the NFL, and they'll talk about federal laws that cover the land. But the federal laws aren't what locking these black men up and these minorities up in these poors. It's these state laws. So a lot of times that's just front. We are down on the ground, and we think this law should be overturned on a national level. And we think President Clinton, when he apologized, he wasn't apologizing for the federal law he implemented. He was apologizing for endorsing Paulie Kloss and Mike Reynolds' 3 Strikes law, to where he endorsed it, and that pushed it over to where I got my life taken.
Okay, so in 1994, you were given a felony, which made it your 3rd strike.
Mm-hmm.
And you were sentenced to 35 to 40 years?
I sentenced 25 years to life plus a 9-year consecutive sentence. If I died and came back, I had to finish that.
Okay. 25 to life. And the to life is one of those things that everyone tries to avoid. Like, for example, I interviewed Reggie Wright Jr., and we talked about Suge's case.
He would have had to win 6 times to not get life in jail.
Win 6 times? Because there were 6 different charges?
It was 3 different charges, but he would have had to beat those twice because they would have kept retrying him.
Up under the 3 Strikes law.
Exactly. Because he was facing his 3rd strike.
Yes, sir.
You know, I've heard of instances where people get 2 years to life, and 25 years later they're still in prison trying to
Well,
fight.
it's
They're
supposed-
trying to get parole.
Well, up under the law as it stand now, I got a friend that's been in there. I got a couple of them. I got one that got 100 years where all it was a domestic dispute. And he's still in there where the girl didn't want him to go and get that time. At that time, it was the mandatory that you received a life sentence. And I got another friend of mine that's been in there 25 years now for less than I want to say an ounce of cocaine. But they had these propositions, these Props 109s, and these other things that where you, if you're in there for drugs, that you're supposed to have been released or lower level. Why are they still in there? He's been in there 25 years.
How did you feel when the judge told you you're getting 25 years to life? And you were how old at the time?
At that time, 94. 94, I'd have been going on. Probably almost about 37.
Okay, 37 years old, you're being told 25 years to life. How did you feel when you heard that?
Well, what ran through my mind at that time, because I already knew by being framed from the beginning I was fit to get it. So it wasn't no thought when I got sentenced. But I know what I did ran through my mind was, well, maybe I'm being punished for things I got away with. I can't cry about it.
So you accepted it?
You ain't got, yeah, I have to accept it because I feel that's only fair. That's a fair bet. Sometimes you do a lot of things where you get away with it, and sometimes karma come back and get you. But my main objective was, I was framed, they did illegal search, they withheld evidence and tried to prove it, and that's what I end up doing. And I'm the first one to ever get out of it. But I didn't cry, I didn't pout, I just took it as, you know, this is the hand I'm dealt, and what can I do to get myself up out of it?
Okay, so you get a 25 to life sentence for your third strike, but you managed to get it reversed.
Yes, sir.
Explain how you did that.
Well, they came with a warrantless search. That's why, to show you an example, and I like so people can get a picture and the perspective of how this system works. They did a warrantless search, which is the same thing in the O.J. Simpson case. You remember they kept arguing about them jumping the gate with no warrant? Mm-hmm. There's only 3 ways you can go into somebody's house behind a door. It's called exigent circumstances. House on fire, you ran in there, or they think you are in danger. Other than that, you have to have a warrant. Mm-hmm. So they ran into this house with no warrant and said that I was running on parole. But I just had went to court for a traffic ticket, and I had a pass with me for me to be there. Mm-hmm. I give them the pass and say, because after I tell the people of the house, I say, ask them to see the warrant, the search warrant for the house, because I knew they should have one. So they say, we don't need one. So they say, we're here to arrest you, Melvin. I say, you here to arrest me for what? Absconding, running on parole. And you can read the newspaper because it was big news. They say I was running on parole. So I tell them, no, I ain't running on parole. I got a pass from my parole agent. Mm-hmm. I gave him the pass. All the police, ATF agents, and everybody, and all this is for me absconding. Why you got ATF agents there? You had sharpshooters sitting out the window for if I run out to shoot me. And I get in the pass. They all huddle out. The next thing I know, they lost the pass. Okay. But then my mother, because I call and tell my mother, I say, call my parole agent and tell him to call up here and tell him he knew I was here. Mm-hmm. He tell my mother, okay, I'll do it. But after the police call him, he go and get the copies that I had, and he took them out, the folders. And then when my mama called in after 4 or 5 days, after she realized I might be facing a life sentence behind this, and I'm facing life, I know it should be dismissed. He said, okay, Miss Farmer, I'm going to tell them I knew Melvin was there. And the next thing you know, he got rid of the copy of that. And he came to court and said he never knew, and he never told my mother. He told my mama, don't call again. He didn't know Melvin was there, and he came to court and lied. But I got out because of illegal search and seizure.
Okay.
Up under the law. They didn't have no right to do it, but I didn't get my day in court for them throwing away the past and planting the dope that was there.
Okay. How much time did you serve by the time they reversed that?
I did just about 4 years.
4 years. Okay. How
And
did
I
it feel?
lost $250,000 that they took from me, 4 cars, my apartment, my furniture, my money, and I didn't get nothing back.
Okay. Well, at least you got your freedom back, though.
Yeah, but I didn't get my day in court.
Yeah.
See, when I got arrested my 60 times, I never cried. But what happens when you got a complaint where your rights violated? Why I don't get my day in court? If I can write a book and say that the police planted drugs on me, or in this case here, why I don't get my day in court?
Yeah, I feel you. Okay. So once you got your case thrown out and the strike reversed, you weren't on parole at all. But you're currently on parole?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what was that for?
But could I tell you something about when I got out, or something about when I got out?
Please.
Very interesting.
Okay.
When I got ready to get out, since I was the first one to ever get out from 3 strikes, and I'm on a level 4 yard, that's the highest it could go, and everybody on there got life. These men asked me to don't forget about them. All of them had life up under 3 strikes for non-violent, non-serious offenses. And so I'm still keeping that promise today. So, by me not having no parole, I could go anywhere in the world. I hadn't seen my mama. I hadn't seen my family for those 4 years. My life looked like it was over with, but I never lost faith. But you know where I went? I went right to Fresno, where I was arrested at, and I called out the author of the 3 strikes law. That's Mike Reynolds. And I told him, let's debate the 3 strikes. And he granted me that, and we had a debate on the biggest radio station down there. And I had to tell him I'm sorry for doing him like that. I did, because I'm going to tear you up.
Okay.
But we had a report. But that show you how bad I felt and how wrong and unjustly. I didn't think about going to see my mama. I didn't think about me being free. I'm thinking about those men I left behind this unjust law, to where a white man's daughter got killed, but he gets to make a law that affects my life. And I've been around death, and when we get killed, we don't get no laws. They make crime bills.
Aha. So Mike Reynolds' daughter got killed, which
And
triggered
then
three strikes.
Paulie Kloss went and backed it up. But what he did was, if my daughter got killed and I'm fighting in her honor, I'm gonna have her face put up there on that picture. He went and took the Paulie Kloss kidnapping, took his daughter off because she had a questionable past, and made it a passionate plea. And that's when Clinton came and endorsed it because it garnered votes.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you're currently on parole right now.
From Georgia.
Okay. And how many years?
I was sentenced to 83 years in Georgia in 2014.
For what?
3 counts of attempted murder on the police and 5 other counts. To where
Okay.
we got into it.
Can you talk about that situation?
Yeah, because I didn't get my day in court then. I want my day in court now.
Okay. So explain what happened.
I'm hustling, because that's another thing. You get in this game where you've been in it so long, you be too old to work and too young for Social Security. And that's where I'm at. So in 2010, I'm hustling in Georgia. We doing credit card. But I see it ain't going right. So I try to run to the car. We at the biggest mall in Lawrenceville, Georgia, Gwinnett County, the most richest in there. And I run to the car. And the police chase me. Open the door, car door, before I could start it. And I got my hands up. They put 3 guns right here, 1, 2, 3, and they had 2 ladies standing here with something on my arm, but my hand's up. So I'm only looking right down this barrel. So my hand's like this for 15 minutes. And I get tired. And I told him either you're going to put them handcuffs on me or you're going to have to pull that trigger. But while I'm looking straight down this barrel, I don't know they done surrounded this car, my car, with other vehicles to block me in because I can't take my eyes off. For 15 minutes, my hands was like this with that. But I knew it was a video at this mall, and it was recording it. And I got tired of it. And I told him, either you're going to arrest me or you're going to have to pull that trigger because you violate my rights. And they said, don't do it. And I said, you're going to pull that trigger or either I'm leaving. And they kept starting shouting and moving. And because the car was running, I just didn't get to put it in reverse because they pulled up on me. So when it come to engagement, you're going to have to pull that trigger. And I slowly go down while steady looking at them. And they starting it because they could have tranquilized me because they ended up shooting me 6 times in the end of this stuff. So it went from a minor case where they violated my rights, but I knew that tape was running. So I put my hand down and I throw the car in reverse. And when I go in reverse, bang! But I thought it was a shotgun blast, but it had ended up being a police car because there wasn't nothing back there when I ran. Boom! So now the police done got knocked out the door, and I'm thinking they shooting. I duck, and I'm going back toward the officers. But I don't want to hit them, so I turn and collide. But they shot up the car, tased me, beat me into a coma. But it was a videotape.
Okay, so the police shot you.
They shot at me, but they didn't because they knew that tape would have showed me with my hands up. Okay. It'd have been murder.
Okay, so the police shot up your car but never hit you.
They shot up the car. I was tasered, everything. The only reason they didn't kill me was because they knew the camera. I took a chance that they wouldn't because if I die, that camera gonna catch them and my mom and them gonna be all right. So, no, this is very, and this, after that, when we go to court.
Well, hold on. So they tase you, they shoot at you.
Beat me up, put me in a coma.
So then they what, just take nightsticks and just beat you up?
No, they beat me up after they dragged me out the car, but they had tasered me when they had the other thing. That's how I found out it was a taser in the door. Then when they snatched the door open, they beat me up, cuffed me, called internal affairs. They came and interviewed me. I said, there's a tape up there that showed they violated my rights. I had my hands up. I surrendered. It was a simple case. And they kept them guns, and I made them pull it. They went and looked at the tape and came and said, we're not going to press charges. When I go to court, they don't have attempted murder. They got what they call aggravated assault. So I'm in court, and I'm thinking they just got me for the credit cards. The judge come in Wrangler jeans, plaid shirt, and I never will forget it. He said, boy, I see you from California, but you in Georgia now, and we got the death penalty. He said, I don't know what happened where a simple case could turn from a credit card case to where you're facing the death penalty if this police die. And that's when I knew they were serious, and this would save my life. I said, Your Honor, there's a video that would show me with my hands up to where I wasn't doing nothing and they wouldn't pull the guns off of me.
Okay, so you said if the police died, so was there a police that was hurt?
Yeah.
Well, what happened to the police?
He lived.
What happened? How did he get hurt?
Remember I told you the door was open when I told you I was leaving. They all was standing in the door with the guns on me for 15 minutes.
Oh, so the police got hit by the door.
I'm going backwards. If they standing in that door,
Got it.
So that's what happened. But
how badly was the police officer hurt?
It's bad enough to where I got 80-something years behind it, was facing the death penalty.
Okay, pretty.
And the judge said it out his mouth. I don't know what happened, but I know I was facing a death penalty.
Okay.
But now, remember I told you that tape would have exonerated me. My own attorney went and got the tape and destroyed it and brought a fake one in where you couldn't see what happened. He destroyed what happened.
Wow.
But why I don't get, that's how come I'm home. Why am I home with all them arrests, all them passes, been up under, no, why am I home now? They never offered me a deal. Christopher Darden, O.J. Simpson attorney,
Okay.
he can testify that we caught him. He helped me investigate to catch him.
Chris Darn helped you. Okay.
Yeah, Chris Darden is a friend of mine where he helped me do quite a few things where they don't went and tried to give me a life sentence. Where another time, they caught me driving a rental car late and said the police went and told them Melvin confessed to stealing the car and knew it was a late return, which would make me eligible for 3 strikes. And they was fit to give me a life sentence after I got out for driving a rental car and he had to come. So my thing is, I caught my attorney where he destroyed evidence that would have exonerated me. And then they forced me to take this deal. And now I'm on 30 years parole where my rights were violated. And anybody that, I wish I had his name right now because I got it on a piece of paper. Anybody that had this attorney, I want to say his name actually, and put him on blast and let's see who's lying. He was caught for destroying my tape. And when we got ready to start trial, these were my exact words I said to him. Check this out, white nigga. You thought I was a dummy from California and wouldn't know you brought in a fake tape to cover up for these police? And when I go to trial, I'm going to tell the courts that you hid a tape on purpose and brought a fake tape to me. So he said, you can't call me that. And I said, white nigga. Fuck you, your family, and anybody else. And when I go to court, I'm telling them. And it's 2 police where I told them, listen to what I'm fit to do so they can come to court and think I'm playing. They were fit to give me life till I caught him. They took me, you can look at the transcripts. They took me to court 7 days in a row to start trial for my life. And they never took me in there because they couldn't figure out what to do. And then he came and he said, Melvin, take this deal. And that's how I got to 80-something years, and I'm home.
And you were how old when you took the 30-year parole deal?
2010? Yeah. I'm 62 now. That's, 9 years ago? I'm about 53 when that went in there.
So you're going to be on parole until you're 83 years old.
I'm on parole. No, I got an 83-year sentence I had to deal. I'm on parole till 2030.
2030. Got it.
I got 20 years parole, but I shouldn't have nothing.
Yeah.
My attorney, those are serious allegations.
Yeah.
But where do I go to get my day in court? I did the time. I didn't cry. For me to say that a white police, my own attorney, hid a tape, brought me a fake one to cover up and say this all we got, and then find out he destroyed the tape, I shouldn't be compensated? My life, I was facing death. If I wouldn't have caught him, I would have got it and they would have did it. So why I don't get my day in court?
Yeah, I feel you. Well, you said that you feel responsible for anybody's death or anything that occurred from Crips.
Well, I feel I'm partly responsible for those that are trying to emulate. And I do feel when somebody's life is taken, because I feel if people wouldn't have been emulating us and others, it wouldn't be fair. So in my personal opinion, I feel sad for people who lost their loved ones due to senseless violence. I'd like to give a shout out today also to Charlotte Lewis, whose son was killed March 20th, the day her son's birthday, Davian. And that was right before the Nipsey Hussle incident. A lot of people had lost their lives. So I feel that I should give back and try to give back to the community and do what I can to address senseless gun violence, whether it be by friend, family, foe, or those that are here to serve and protect us.
Well, you mentioned Nipsey Hussle. We lost him earlier this year, and that was once again Crip on Crip violence. It was, now that more information is coming out, Eric Holder, who was actually defended by your friend Chris Darden.
No,
at some
he
point.
reclused himself.
He reclused himself, but he originally
he had
death threats.
death threats, and I told him that was coming with that, to be careful on
Oh,
that.
so you had a conversation with Chris Darden about him representing Eric Holder.
I had a conversation about something else prior to that involved the 60, to where when you look in Chris Darden's book, he says one case that he feels somebody got found guilty of a murder where he felt he was innocent and has been hunting him. That kid is from the Rollin 60s, J Stone. And this is why we go back to social justice and fairness. So I had told him, J Stone, hey man, Chris say you might have been innocent. And I was trying to, because don't nobody, it's one thing to be accused of something you didn't do.
Yeah.
Right is right, is wrong is wrong. So when I hear about him catching that case, I text him and say, hey bro, be careful. These are the Rollin 60s. There's nobody to play with. Watch yourself.
Why do you think he took on that, representing Eric Holder?
Well, I know why he took it on.
Why is that?
Because Eric Holder probably, when you seen John Hinckley shoot the president, he got to use a defense called mental capacity. He was mentally unstable.
Temporary insanity?
Yeah. That's what would have been used here probably, which blacks aren't allowed to use. So he'd have probably been testing the water, because I text him and say, are you trying to try this case under temporary insanity, mental illness? And he didn't respond, but I say, I understand that's what you're probably trying to do. And that's what blacks aren't afforded to do, and how a lot of times these cases could be somewhere they were mental ill health, to where they should have been sent to a hospital or something and treated for treatment, as opposed to mass incarceration, or being incarcerated and treated as a criminal. So he would have been addressing that, to where John Hinckley shot a president, but he got to go to the St. Elizabeth up
Right.
under this defense.
I figured that. I mean,
That's the only logical thing you could think of.
Right.
What
because,
defense can you say?
Right, because Eric Holder has a history of mental illness. Matter of fact, they finally caught him in a mental hospital. That's where he just checked himself in. And to kill someone in broad daylight in front of a whole bunch of people with cameras everywhere, that would be the defense I thought that he would use.
Me too.
Yeah, but he ended up reclusing himself because people were threatening to kill him. Mm-hmm. Were you surprised that he reclused himself?
I talked to him. I texted him. Nope. Not when your mom's getting sick. Not when you threaten somebody's mother
His mother was being threatened.
and his kids.
Yeah.
It wasn't about him, because a lot of times you have to stand up to bite the bullet for what you believe in. But when you start jeopardizing other people's lives, we as blacks have to really get off this lynch mob, Willie Lynch ass mentality, to where when somebody got a disagreement or somebody got other opinion, you want to go and lynch them, or downgrade them, or castrate them. That's showing what they say, shade. Mm-hmm. Stay in your lane. Like, for instance, a lot of times I be with Fred Hampton, Triple C's, Black Panthers. But they philosophies, anti-police, this, that, ain't my same politics. I'm a Crip. We on this different agenda. And these are the same way you have to go back to fairness and stand in your lane, and other people leave. So when it comes to that, he has a right.
Eric Holder.
What about him?
Well, when you say he has the right, you're talking about Eric Holder, or you're talking about Chris Darden?
Everybody has. You can't pick and choose when you're talking about the criminal justice system.
Okay.
Let me just ask you this. Does everybody have a right to a defense?
Yes.
There, your answer is there.
Oh, there you go. Did you know Nipsey Hussle at all?
I've known him not on a personal basis, but we spoke. Actually, we were at the Greek Auditorium for what's that? LA Live last chance, because he had a lot of initiatives
Yeah.
and stuff that he had going on that were not really publicized, other than his albums where he was writing initiatives and other things to give back to the community as well as to address the criminal justice system.
I mean, when you look at that whole situation, do you feel that Eric Holder should get temporary insanity, or do you feel that he should? Well, I mean, the death penalty isn't happening anymore. I think there's a moratorium on the death penalty
Right now
in California. Do you feel that he should get life in prison, or do you feel that he should get temporary insanity and just serve out his sentence in a mental hospital?
I have no say in that.
Yeah.
That's, now if we're talking about something, I can't speak on that, and nobody else should speak on it. That's in-house. That's between them. Let them handle that. Now, if you was asking me about somebody, say like Cameron Terrell, the boy that got out on a $5 million bail after taking some youngsters to go kill some of people from my set, then he get caught, he get told on, he bail out. The youngsters that's juveniles, they facing life while he gets to speak freely and immunity. But to show you how the system and the police is, after he do that, they come back and arrest him. Now he in jail, facing life. So they just pit each other against each other. So when it come to that, or say for instance, what's the young girl name? The little 13-year-old that got killed. When it's senseless gun violence, and you hurt an innocent, don't get mad if they take your life. Don't get mad if the system. So when it come to that, it goes both ways in a sense of fairness.
Well, out of all the tragedy from the Nipsey Hussle murder, the one positive thing that did come out was the gang peace march that Big U helped to organize. Were you part of that?
I help yes.
You helped organize it as well?
It's quite a few people.
Quite a few people.
But let me say, give those that too, because a lot of times we don't give credit to other people that does the work. You also had Mad Bone, you had Mad Bone, you had Lil Sody, you had Peak Windbush, you had Spider from Playboy Gangster. You had all representatives from all over the Nation of Islam. So we want to say a shout out to them. A lot of things go on within this community to where we tend to give people that have the platform the credit when it's really the guys with their boots on the ground where people don't acknowledge them.
Yeah.
So I'd like to give special thanks to them. But yes, at the beginning, I wasn't part of LA Gangs Unite.
Okay. And from what I understand, that was one of the first times in 40 years that the Rollin 60s and the Eight Tray Gangsters congregated together on a mass scale in a perfect
On any scale.
On any scale, in a peaceful situation.
Yes.
How did that feel?
Well, since I wasn't involved, let's get this straight. Do you think one murder out of 48 years of murder made the Gangster Crips and the 60s talk all at one time? There had been dialogue going on for 2 or 3 years, because I'm a member of prison ministry at River Life Ministry, and Pete Windbush and I had been talking. And slowly, things start coming. And when Nipsey murder happened, it created a passage and an opening to create some type of dialogue on a bigger scale. So when Big U, and that's why I mentioned Mad Bone, because I'm here, but I'm not going to go say, oh, they could come. I don't do it like that. It was a democratic way to where, okay, hey, man, Melvin, we'll go over there. And that's when we met over there. I did The Hidden Corners, my show, which you can go on there on Facebook, Instagram, and you can see exactly what happened that day before it was aired, and that meeting in its actuality. And so, yeah, and that started the dialogue amongst them toward talking and just falling back, as I say.
Yeah, that was great. That was great for LA. Congratulations on being a part of that.
But the problem with that is, nothing's wrong with that, but the movement should have still been going on. When Nipsey was slain, for 30 days there were no murders. There was a lot of talk amongst warring factions to where public and elected officials should have came in to provided the resources at that moment.
Yeah.
To keep this sustainable, to create the dialogue. So what happens is, now you have other murders occurring, not between the 60s and the Eight Trays. They're still, because that was really the basis of where they stand in their lane and we gonna stay in our lane. So that's still going on, but that didn't affect the surrounding areas to where we had them all at once. So a lot of times this senseless gun violence could be eradicated and decreased, because gun violence had went down to its lowest level since 1966.
Which was before Crips and Bloods.
Yeah, it was doing when it was during the era of pro-black, and they were fighting. But in 2015, which was the year of the 100 days, 100 nights, which was the year of the most deadly and disrespectful disregard for human life I ever seen in my 48 years of this, and I've seen quite a bit. But from 2015, an effort was put forward to decrease gun violence in Death Alley, which is where we stay, which is nationally known. That's when the 100 days. So something had to be going on from 2015 up to 2019, because it's decreased every year. And from that year, Karen Bass had called me in, Marquise Dawson, Maxine Waters. They always call in and ask you to help, but they don't want to supply the employment or the resources to help you sustain this, and then you put back and sent back to the wolves.
You know, we recently did an interview with Keefe D, which I guess you saw?
I seen part of it.
Seen part of it. Did you know Keefe D at all?
I knew Stone, the ones, I didn't know Keefe D personally, but I had talked to him about being on the show.
Okay. What are your thoughts on the whole situation? I mean, now that the whole story is out, you know, when you look at the 1996 murder of Tupac Shakur, and now you hear Keefe D's side of the story and what led up to the murder and so forth.
I never heard Keefe D version of what happened on his side, nor does it even, I don't have no opinion.
Okay.
That's their lane. That's their business.
Well, the reason why I ask this is that when you look at this whole story, you know, and depending on who you talk to, you could say that Tupac died gangbanging. He went and attacked Orlando Anderson, who was a known Southside Compton Crip, and put himself in a situation where now it's a gang conflict. It's not just.
Let me put it like this so we can get around to it. And this go for every time, particularly in gangbanging. And then it's very simple. See, it don't take no NATO meeting, no mixing chemicals to figure out the bottom line of shit. The bottom line is this. The only thing stronger than a man's pride is a mother's love. Every common murder have a common denominator you just named. From Nipsey Hussle on down, and every one of them behind another man's pride.
Mm.
Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't even have to revisit it. I've seen this 48 years. And the one common denominator with all of them that got killed, gangbanging, is their pride.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in fact, in our interview, Keefe D said that you initially wanted to go talk to Suge about the whole situation.
Yeah. We was I felt we was on that type of level where we can just get this shit squashed, get a head up, and stuff like that with Lane and Tupac.
You wanted to meet up with Suge, but you had no way of getting in contact with him.
Yeah, one of my homies from out there we had some homies lived out there.
Okay.
that was kind of in the game, and they like they put have a concert at the 662 Club. So we
Right.
went up there.
Which was Suge's club.
Yeah, we went up there.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
So you guys went over there, but there was a bunch of cops and everything in front. Oh, there wasn't.
No, it wasn't no cops. We was there for about 30, 40 minutes in the back parking lot.
And when I talked to, Tupac's entourage, they all said that Tupac would have done it. Tupac liked fighting. He was, and Suge liked fighting also. So had they actually met up, they probably would have had a fist fight, and none of this would have happened. But instead, because you had this pride issue, someone's pride was hurt for getting beat up, and they couldn't have a one-on-one fight. That's when the guns came out, and then a murder occurs.
Mm-hmm. The equalizer.
The equalizer. And you've seen this time and time again.
Mm-hmm. That's for bullies in some cases. But usually when we was growing up, our equalizers for those that were Tookie size, and because we 14, you 18, you think you're gonna bully, we got something for you too.
Mm. What do you think, and this kind of touches off the Tupac thing, when you have these rappers these days who claim gang affiliation, like the Chris Browns, the Lil Waynes, and the list kind of goes on, the Soulja Boys, who become rich and famous and then want to affiliate themselves with a gang afterwards?
What do I think about that?
Yeah.
Well, you got a lot of people that claiming Crip or blood or GD or whatever and using that. I'm not so much concerned about what they do. I'm more concerned about those that are out here actually in the field that are getting subject to the oppressions and abuse or the things that they're rapping about or talking about. I'm more important about what we can do to change their minds from being tax burdens to taxpayers or going to the poll and vote and educating them and giving them something to march with. So when it comes to that, it's like it's being fashionable. Like down when I was in Georgia, it ain't fashionable to be a Crip. Down there, you got Gangster Disciples, you got the New Orleans boys that was there from the Katrina or whatever that is. You got South Carolina, you got New York Bloods. So it's fashionable to be these type of things and to claim this and that. It's something like a cult era. But now when you entertainment and acting and you claiming, say, Crip or Blood, I'm going to just say Crip. But what are you really doing to give back for what you're claiming? You're making your money at one time off of the blood of others people's backs. A lot of sorrow. So the real question is, what you gonna do to give back to your community? Because I do a lot without no money. You can't, money don't matter on the streets. Money ain't that. Your words, your bond, your character, those are the ingredients that sustain you to survival on the streets. I never seen a homeless man commit suicide. But I seen a lot of rich people kill themselves because they don't know how to survive after that money or material thing.
Yeah, like Jeffrey Epstein just recently. Although we don't know what exactly happened, but
if he killed himself.
If he killed himself and he was a billionaire.
Yeah.
Yeah. I interviewed Mob James on my show a few times, who's Mob Piru. He was one of the, main guys on death row that brought all the Bloods over there. And he said that
I didn't get a check when Bunchy was killed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I never got a check, but now nobody I ever hurt. You know what I'm saying? This is what we was doing. And for this to be my life, and then at the end of the day, my friends killed my brother, man, that killed me. So there's no way in the world I can be a part of this and still feel good about it.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't understand why my nephews and my other brother still want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Ain't that much street out here.
Right. And this is why in the beginning of the interview, when I said you're Mob Piru, you said used to be.
Yeah.
So you don't claim it anymore.
No, I don't. Man, you better sock me upside my head if I ever say that again in my life.
Do you feel the same way about being an Eight Tray gangster? Do you feel like you're still an Eight Tray gangster, or do you feel when you look at what you've done in their history, what's gotten you to this point, and you've said that, you know, you're too young for Social Security and too old to be employable, do you feel that you made a mistake by taking that route?
Anybody, that's why I try to tell kids, don't follow, don't emulate, don't make the same mistake as me. Because there's only two things. You know, the number one deterrent for crime is age. As you get older, you start realizing your ways and slowing down. But a lot of people don't realize also as you get older, the damage you do to your family. You know, you do 35, 40 years, or somebody in your family died, then you got to look in your mama's eyes. And then you see that hurt in her eyes to where you don't drag your mama through 30, 40 years of pure hell. And these come back to choices. So I feel the same way as the brother man do, that it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, I can count on my fingers how many people are successful. But ask me the countless lives that was wasted at that time. But it's always a chance to come back and redeem yourself. All is not lost. You can come back and give back and do what you need to do to give back to society, particularly if you're in a position where you have the influence to educate the youth and to tell these kids not about the gang culture, the real horrors of it. It's not worth it.
And that's what we try to push on this show.
Yeah.
This is why we bring the, you know, I don't want to use the word OG.
No, you go ahead.
I know you don't like
opportunity giver. How about that?
Opportunity giver. This is why we bring the OGs like yourself over here to show people that this is not a great career path. That this comes with a lot of pain, a lot of loss, a lot of prison time, a lot of death, a lot of hurt. So, Melvin Farmer, I appreciate you coming in and telling the story, and I think we're going to affect a lot of lives when people watch this.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.